What's up guys, this is Yacineygo and today we're going to be going over the best going second cards that you can play in Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now, so it includes hand traps as well as board breakers. And yeah, I mean, I guess you can say that post-ban list, what really changes the fact that there is less lingering floodgates. So to some degree you can say that board breakers are better, but at the same time people always find a way to adjust. So yeah, obviously hand traps are always going to be a part of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yeah, before we go any further, as always, you know the drill, smash the like and subscribe button. Alright, the first card is Contact C. I'm gonna play this in solid option because it's not the kind of card that you can main deck ever. I don't really think that's worth it. Obviously, especially since the link mechanic is a thing, and obviously when this card gets popular, it becomes less good because people can start respecting it. So honestly, this card's only really good against pure Yummy, that's it. It's not good against any other Yummy version. Against the Sulfa Court build, it makes no sense because they're just gonna link it off as well as like 2 other Sulfa Court monsters for Kulia, and then they can still Pendulum Summon for like 2 or 3 cards. And then they can full Yummy combo, and also they have an Omni Negate for anything else you've got, so you're really helping them by giving them a body. And same thing against the Mitsurugi version, because they can go Habakiri, summon Saji, even tribute the Contact C if they want to, or they can link it off and then play from there because they have so many pushes. It's not like Yummy where it's really just limited to normal summon and then make a link 1, and if they make a link 2, then they're kind of screwed unless they play like IP into Secure Gardna, because Cross Sheep is not going to get you there unless you open Marshmallow or Cup C. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It's still a card that can be decent. If you can side deck it, especially if you deck build around it and you play other hand traps that work along with it, such as Ghost Reaper, but by itself, it's not really going to get you there, only against pure Yummy. That's pretty much it. Anyways, Herald of the Abyss is a card that I'm going to be placing in Borderline. All it really does is out like a Liger Dancer and then prevent the other Liger Dancer from activating its effect, which is very good. It can be a good thrust target in case you have absolutely 0 outs to Lunalight, but the issue is that Thrust can only get to this card once your opponent used the monster effect, and Lunalight doesn't have to use a monster effect. So you're being very reactive unless you're playing 3 copies of this, and this card is absolutely not worth playing as a 3 of because of the inherent loophole and the fact that it's only really good against monster effects. It's not like Salesban where the card is actually much better going second because you can also call spells and traps, but it's even playable going first. Salesban is somewhere here, but I'm not seeing it because I'm blind, so yeah, we're gonna move on. Jordan Logbird, this card is actually main deck worthy, I think. It's a really good card because you can cover a lot of matchups, pretty much everything in the game other than pure Yummy, as well as Dragon Tail and Malice, of course. But everything else to some degree, Droll is pretty good against, or at least like somewhat playable, like even against DDD, where it's not a great card against them. It can still sometimes be decent, but it's obviously it's not a turn skip or anything. Yeah, Droll is decent. It's just that it's better than like most other hand traps that you can play, but sometimes obviously you're still gonna lose with it. So yeah, don't rely too much on this card. Dimension Shifter, yeah, if you can main deck it, it's pretty good, but it can be dead against a lot of matchups, and sometimes it's just not enough. But it doesn't really hurt you if you're playing pure Mitsurugi, so why not? And if you're playing Malice, of course, it doesn't really hurt you that much either. Dominus Purge, this card is pretty good as well. It's this card is really interesting because it feels like it's always the worst out of it and Dominus Impulse, but sometimes it ends up being randomly better. But right now it just feels like it's way below Dominus Impulse, so I'm gonna have to place Impulse probably over here. If you can play the card, you've got no excuse not to play the card, either in your main or your side deck. Obviously, if you're playing Lunalight, you can argue you're just gonna be playing a full board breaker deck and then side deck this card, but it's at the very least a card that should be in your side deck. But if you're not playing Lunalight, it should be in your main deck. And Dominus Purge, it should still be in your main deck, but it's not as good, so you shouldn't feel as bad if you're not playing it. Anti-Magic Arrows, it's only really good in like Mermail against random decks, so yeah, that card's irrelevant for now. Veiler, not a big fan of it. If you're not main decking this card, you're not playing it whatsoever. And there's not even that much of an argument to even main deck it in the first place. It's still a hand trap that is not once per turn, that is decent, that you can play in Dragon Tail, but that's all I can really give it. Chaos Hunter unplayable, Enemy Controller unplayable. Lava Golem, pretty bad. You can thrust into, what's this, Dark Spirit's Mastery, and then Surge this card. That's what Steven did at YCS Lima, and he won that YCS. So I don't know if it really came up for him. This card's a solid option, but nothing more. So you can send a bunch of cards from your extra deck to the graveyard to bounce back a lot of things, and your opponent can't really respond with monster effects, which on paper looks really good, but sometimes it just doesn't feel like it's enough, especially when your opponents can do so much off of one card. You also need like so many cards for this, like in your extra deck, for this card to really be worth it. It's kind of like Ghost Reaper and Super Poly, or if you can't afford to play those cards, then obviously Ultimate Slayer is not going to be doing too much for you, especially since all the best decks, their extra deck space all of them is super tight, so it's really tough for me to justify this card. If it was like a Raziel format, and if Raziel was actually fair, I'd say, yeah, Ultimate Slayer is pretty good. Anyways, Spellbound, yeah, I can't really think of like any deck really that loses to Spellbound. It's literally unplayable. Change of Heart unplayable, obviously. Cosmic Cyclone unplayable. Soul Release unplayable. Regeki, this is a solid option. You can definitely side deck this card. Actually, you know what? It's a side deck worthy card for sure. If you're committed to board breakers, this is one of the best board breakers that you can play easily. Especially since when you use it, if your opponent doesn't have Herald or Great Purification, it clears everything, and then your opponent just has like Mitsurugi Prayers, maybe with like Yummy Surprise, which you can argue you can kind of deal with depending on your hand and depending on the situation, or at least it's way easier to deal with that than, you know, a bunch of potential Yummy Synchros right away. So yeah, it really does depend on the situation, like I said. Anyways, Typhoon, yeah, this card, I don't really think it does anything against any deck right now. Sphere Mode, this is worse than Lava Golem because you have to draw the card, but it's still not too bad. Like, it's, I mean, yeah, it's not good enough to be in borderline though. Unless you're playing Dragon Tail or Mitsurugi, I wouldn't really play this card. No, actually, you know what? Nah, I'm gonna have to place it there. I can't cap too much. Lightning Storm, definitely a solid side deck worthy card. Obviously, if you can't really main deck this card, even if you're playing board breakers, I don't really think that makes too much sense. Ash, you gotta stop Fua, so you gotta play the card. Evenly, never really been a big fan of this. By the way, I'm gonna have to downgrade this card all the way down here, I think, and maybe this even here, I don't know. But yeah, Evenly Matched, I think, is actually just a bad card. People are making so many Omni Negates or extremely unfair boards or floodgating the crap out of you, so Evenly is just unplayable at the crit moment, and it's also very bad against half boards. You lose so much momentum, and your opponent has leverage over you because he chooses the card that he keeps, and it feels like this card always does a lot, but not really. It really just doesn't, unless your opponent misplays into it, really. Harpy's Feather Duster. Yeah, this card's better than Lightning Storm, so you can argue that these cards are pretty similar, but yeah, it's interchangeable, I guess we can say. So, Spell card, Soul Exchange. This is actually a really cool card. I always have it in my tier list, but I don't know if I can really put it in a solid option, but it definitely is a solid option if your deck can play it. The issue is that decks that can play this card usually are not the best because, you know, Tribute Summon decks in 2025 with all these insane combo-heavy decks, it's hard to catch up with them, but this card is really insane. You can tribute over 2 Liger Dancers with it, so you can turn pretty much any level 7 or higher monster into a Lava Golem. Not too bad. Infinite Impermanence. This card, okay, so you can main deck this card for sure, absolutely, but I wouldn't really side deck this card, but Yummy Mitsurugi is doing it, so you can argue this card can be here, it can be here, or some people are even saying the card is just not good enough overall, so it should be here or even here, which I think is just a little delusional. I wouldn't place Imperm down there. I still think it's a main deck worthy card if you're committed to playing hand traps. Overall, you don't have to really play this card. You can definitely live without Imperm. You can live without most hand traps, but you would still have to play like Fua and Ash at the very least with Droll. So I'm just gonna knock this card out here right now. I'm gonna have to say it's main deck worthy. But Imperm, I don't know. This one's, it's debatable. Obviously, it depends on your deck. Forbidden Droplet. I wouldn't really main deck this card in Yummy Mitsurugi. I wouldn't main deck it in Lunalight. I wouldn't side deck it either in Lunalight, except against like Dragon Tail or certain weird obscure decks, but the fact that this card doesn't perform really well into Herald of the Arclight, for me, is a massive turnoff. That's one of my biggest issues. I think this card is only really main deck worthy in Crystron, and that's it, really. Just because you don't really neg when you get rid of your Crystron cards. They just do the exact same thing in your graveyard as they do in your hand, and sometimes it even makes your hands better because you clog on too many normal summons. You know, you got Smiger, you got a lot of other stuff, and Droplet just makes things a little easier. And it also helps you beat the Drill and Logbird, you know? You activate a card that searches, and then on resolution, you change Droplet, turn player priority, send a monster, and then your opponent can't directly respond with a monster effect. So no Drill, you delayed by 1 action, it's not like you negated, but it can still be decent. I would still place this card inside deck worthy, but again, it does depend on your deck. DD Crew, I think, is like a bad solid option, but it's still a playable card, because, you know, this card against Kusanagi trying to recycle back Mitsurugi Prayers, it's fine. The issue is that Yummy Mitsurugi, if they don't play the big package, then this card is literally useless because they just go Ritual Summon more Akumo from deck, and then Surge the Mirror, activate Mirror, and then even if you chain DD Crow, they chain more Akumo, make you discard a card from your hand, and then you just neg like crazy, and you're not even achieving that much. So I think it is utter garbage. DD Crow just not good enough, unfortunately. But it still is playable in Dragon Tail. It has some applications. I can't say it's garbage. It's kind of like Effect Veiler, but you know what? I'm gonna have to downgrade it here, unfortunately. Triple Tactic Talent. I mean, it's not really a good card going second. It's more of like a going first card. So if you're playing board breakers, I would definitely side deck it, even going second. So it depends. But I mean, if you're playing board breakers, then you're just main decking this card at this point. So it doesn't really make too much sense. It's a good card for sure, but you don't have to main deck it. If you want to play like all hand traps, this card should definitely be in your side deck, not in your main deck, because it kind of defeats the purpose. You know, when you draw like one hand trap in talent, you're like, and then your opponent just still makes a half board, like a full board, because your one hand trap wasn't enough. You're like, bro, if that talent was like another hand trap, then I might have had it. You know, that's a position I've been in multiple times in my life. Nibiru, it's definitely a solid option. It's not a card that you have to main or side deck this format. If you want to not play the card, you don't have to play the card. If you want to play the card, deck build around it, because the card is not going to do a lot of magic by itself. Retang C is definitely one of the best side deck options in the game right now. It just carries against Dragon Tail, and it's very good against Lunalite, so that's all I really have to say. It's not good against any other deck, but you don't need it for any other deck, so you're good. I guess Despia, not really. Even then, kind of, I don't know. Super Poly, again, if you're playing board breakers, I think this is one of the better cards that you can play. But unfortunately, because of all the setup with like the extra deck and stuff, I'm gonna have to place this at the very bottom, just like Ultimate Slayer has the issue with where the card is just not good enough if you don't have enough like targets in your extra deck. Like sometimes it's like 2, 3, 4 targets for the card to really shine. Otherwise, it just does nothing. Like for Ultimate Slayer, for example, it's gonna be Tri Brigade, Mauser, the Link monster that Book of Moon, whatever, and then Elder Entity Entis, as well as Golden Cloud Beast Malong. And I don't really think there's anything else that you can play, so maybe 3 cards. And then for Super Poly, it's gonna be Garura and Muddragon, so it's not even like they overlap or anything, unfortunately. I guess you can Ultimate Slayer send Garura, it's just not as good, unfortunately. Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Shield, dog shit. Dark Hole, very good. Sometimes better than Regeki. Sometimes worse, it depends. If you play like Bestials or Nibiru, you can like neg yourself one body, which can be a little unfortunate. But sometimes it can play in your favor. If you're playing Izuna, that can also be an issue. But at the same time, this card can randomly out like Ibli, or like random bullshit out of nowhere. Ibli is like the one card where Dark Hole would be like significantly better. Apart from that, usually it's just a worse Regeki. So if you're trying to play, I guess it depends really, but yeah, I'd say I'd probably legit like place it there. Lightning Storm being better than both these cards, I think. Songs at the Dominators, it's another solid option. If you want to play like the yummy board breaker deck, you can play that with Dominus Purge and Imperm and a lot of board breakers. I think this is the one format where it might make the most amount of sense, just because there's less lingering floodgates. But I still don't really know if I really believe in it, but. It doesn't suck, and honestly, I could be wrong. Maybe it's better than I think it is. Blink Out, no, it's not really good. Spell card Monster Reborn. It's worse than it was before, but it was nice in like the Malice Mirror where you can like steal your opponent's Lancia and then Lancia your opponent again. It was like a Monster Reborn or like a copycat Lancia really. Kashtira Fenrir going second, not ideal. Apparently, it's not as good as like the Dark End Evaporation Dragon package in Dragon Tail, so I'm gonna have to place it maybe here, maybe. It could be a little better though. Murmur of the Forest. Field spells are not great right now, so I'd place it here. Bestial Magnemite. It's only really good in Dragon Tail, but it's a great card. You don't have to play a lot of Bestials really. It can just be one Magnemite and that's it. That's all. You don't have to play Jewess Worm or Baldric. Lancia. It's a solid option for sure. Malice is still a popular deck, and you can argue that this card also does overlap for Lunalite and Crystron, so it doesn't suck. And also Orchist, but the odds of facing Orchist are very, very low. So this card overall will not perform really well in your side deck. So if you have to dedicate like 3 slots to it, it's not like the best. But I guess if you can play 1 copy of it, and then you can play like 7 Tachyon to search it, it's not bad. But then you also have to play like the Ragna Infinity or the Archfiend Seraph to search it, so that's the issue. Triple Tactic Thrust. I mean, it's interchangeable with Talent. Very similar cards. Gamma, it's a bad, solid option. Probably here. As well as Delta, obviously, because, you know, you can't rank one without ranking the other. If you're playing one, then you're playing the other as well. Book of Eclipse. This card has been consistently disappointing for me. I'm not a big fan of how it interacts against Mitsurugi, because even if the monsters are face down, they're literally just as threatening. Like, you can still Great Purification, Tribute, or Mitsurugi Prayers Tribute, it changes nothing. This card literally makes you dodge 0 interruptions against pure Mitsurugi, so honestly it kind of sucks, and otherwise it just gets negated, so Dark Ruler is just much better. And speaking of the devil, Dark Ruler is definitely a main deckable board breaker right now. Very good card. I'm probably going to place it there just because board breakers to me always get like less priority than hand shops that are like somewhat generic or like extremely overpowered, like these for example. Like these are generic, so I think they deserve like this ranking. Fua is like the god card, Ash negates the god card, and then Drool is like the second closest thing there is to Fua, so it's not bad. Moltres Pirelli is definitely not on the same level as Fua right now, unless you're playing against White Forest, but you get what I'm saying. And then Impulse is broken, Shifter is like super broken, but it's a one-of, and it's only really good in like a handful of decks. And then Dark Ruler is like the god board breaker at the moment. It's Dominus Spiral, borderline as well. Actually here, when I think about it, it's not the best card. Ghost Ogre, yeah, no, this card is shit right now. It's so bad. This is not a Ghost Ogre format at all. I'm gonna have to place it there, really. Ghost Reaper, I think, actually has way more potential, so I'm gonna rank it here. Yeah, it's only really good, like, against Yummy, and even then, like, you have to time it, like, very, very smart. Like, against Yummy Mitsurugi, it can be really good. If they summon Sorrow Cat as well as a level 1 monster, you wait until that timing, and then you can Reaper the Herald of Arclight, and then they committed so many resources, they can't make the Herald, so they can't bridge into Mitsurugi, but you get hard punished if they open the Habakiri anyways. So that can be an issue, but apart from that, like, you can still call Yummy Snatchy. It's just that your opponent can make the Link Rebo and then cup Yummy away. And if your opponent drew like one of the field spells or play Starham, then you're screwed, but Starham is only really played in pure Yummy. It's not played in any other build, so usually this card will be good enough for one turn, and one turn only. It doesn't like stall you out the whole game, because obviously over time they'll be able to search the field spell, discard it, and then shuffle it back as well as 2 Yummy Snatchies and then play the game. So this card is not Exodia, it's just a solid option, again for one turn, and that's it. Metal Chonus is a big boy, but you can't main deck it unfortunately, because just like Ultimate Slayer as well as Super Poly, you need so many extra deck cards or specific main deck cards for this card to be good that usually it only ends up being good against certain matchups like mirror matches, but when it is good, it is extremely good. This card is particularly insane in the Yummy mirror match because you negate like the Yummy Snatchy and then you summon your own Yummy and then you get the full combo. So you can side out consistency cards and then side in this card. Your going second will be significantly better and you're not going to be losing in any form of consistency. Skullmeister, this card is good against the graveyard effect of Saji when they summon it and then tribute it off of Murakumo. But if they have any other monster, they could theoretically play around this card by tributing the other monster, but that plays into Imperm. But at the same time, nobody's going to be playing around Skullmeister because people prefer playing around Imperm. So I think this card is alright-ish, but I think it's still worse than Veiler and DD Crow. It's just like, it's maybe here. Yeah. Seal's Ban. This is actually a really nice card. Obviously, you can't main deck the card. It's probably the worst card in side deck worthy because it's very niche. But I think if you play this in K9 Crystron or a K9 deck, well, a K9 combo deck at least, this card can be cool because you can go Noroi, look at hand, and then when you go Seal's Ban, you don't have to declare a random card name. You can actually call the one hand trap that your opponent held in hand for so long. So if your opponent had like an Impulse that he was holding for your Imperial Princess to revive back Spell Canceller, for example, this is where this card can end up being better than Crossout, better than Call by the Grave. Or if your opponent has like 2 hand traps that can't be chained right away, like you go Seal's Ban, Cold Jewel, and Logbird out of nowhere really, this card can be Exodia. So it depends on the situation, but it can really be a cool card. But going second, obviously this card is a nice board breaker, but it feels a little too 1-for-1-y, unless you're using it against a very oppressive card like Liger Dancer or Murakumo, or baiting like a trade 1-for-1 with an Omni Negate. Now we've got Ghost Bell, which is definitely a card that you could main deck. Maybe a little... It's interchangeable with Ghost Bell. I actually think this card sucks overall as a card, not even like in the Kryn format, because I think the Kryn format Ghost Bell is decent, but as a card I think it's a really bad card because it negates the activation. So if you negate Mitsurugi Prayers, your opponent can just use Mitsurugi Prayers again, which is really an issue because if your opponent goes draw phase Mitsurugi Prayers, tribute Habakiri, what are you gonna do? You're gonna Ghost Bell the Mitsurugi Prayers, your opponent can still play. Because then the Habakiri can search Prayers again, and then you go Prayers, search Habakiri, and then Habakiri effects, summon Saji, tribute, search Ritual, activate Ritual, and then, play from there. So you're gonna be a little screwed. Ghost Bell is just not gonna be doing enough in that instance. So that's the one problem that I really have. But if you I guess you can really high roll with this card, because in that instance you can also argue that any other hand shop wouldn't really have done much of anything. It's just that sometimes this card really feels like I'm hand looping myself for one card and literally does nothing at all. So even though it's main deck worthy and it's in this like category, I still don't consider it a great card. Just like Imperm is not like a fantastic card, but there is no other good hand shop to play right now. Like the decks, when they're going first, they're way too oppressive, which is why a lot of people are considering board breakers as well. And honestly, like, you can even argue at this point, Forbidden Droplet should be upgraded. You can say that. Maybe. Anyways, Golden Slicer. This card is kind of shit. I'm gonna have to place it there. I don't like it at all, but some people make it work. It's just that banishing your whole hand or your whole extra deck doesn't really feel like the play. Even when you're breaking a board, unless you're playing Tenpai and you don't care because you don't have a grind game, I'm not a fan of a card like this, usually. But it can be okay. Zooking Alpha, trash. Dino Rest or Pancratops. It's kind of comparable to Fenrir, but it's worth going second, so I'll probably place it here or something. Maybe right below Fenrir. Phantasme is an okay card. Maybe gonna have to place it like below Nibiru. It's fine. Maybe above. Really, it doesn't change too much. I don't think this card is gonna be like deciding too many games, honestly. Like even against Yumi, where it feels like it's a really good matchup, they can still chain block a Kuroki 1 and then cup Yumi away, chilling 2. And then this card can't negate, can't destroy, so it really just is like an extra body that gives you consistency, but it doesn't really make you plus. And then it still turns on like triple tactic talent and even thrust for the nasty effect. And then they can go talent, look at hand, and then you lose the game, so it's not the best. And very often this card just gets destroyed by Murakumo, so it's not even like you can say that it does much of anything. I'm not a big fan. Kurikara, this card I think is like comparable to a Kaiju, but maybe gonna have to be here. It's okay. Depends. Maybe it's better in like Genesis format. It was better when Vanquish Soul could play it. Right now, I don't really think it's like super ideal. Maybe it's here. I don't know. It's still good like against Liger Dancer if you can force them out, like both of them out. Otherwise, like it's usually worse than a Kaiju because it's more reactive. Xyz on core, unless Featherstorm becomes like super popular, I'm not a big fan. You know what? I'm actually gonna downgrade Kurikara. I don't know why I placed it so high at first. Mochimi Perulia. If you're not main decking the card, I don't really see why you should side deck the card, but I'm probably gonna still have to place it in solid option. And then Meows, this is gonna shock everyone, but I'm actually gonna place Meows right after Perulia. I think this card is extremely overhyped. If you're playing against Yumi Sulfa Cord Mitsurugi, Meows gets to a draw super late on the combo because the Sulfa Cord engine doesn't play into Meows at all, but it plays mega hard into Perulia and Fua, both of them. You give so many draws, so many summons are from the hand and extra deck, whereas almost none of them are from the grave, so I don't understand why people keep swearing on Mochimi Meows. This card sucks ass. But I mean, it's still like one of the better cards that you can play. It's just that if you're playing like 9 Chummies, you're gonna break on too many Chummies, and you're also gonna draw into Chummies, and then you're never gonna be interrupting your opponent. So usually it's kind of like you play Fua for sure, and then you choose one or the other. And then you can also main deck Meows. You have to deck build super specifically around that, so it's not something that you can do for free. But yeah, that's it for this tier list. You guys let me know how you feel about the best hand shops and the best board breakers, as well as the format overall in the comment section below. I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.